my favorite memories of childhood was walking into the local town hall and hearing music blasting out of the speakers as I watched the breakdancing battles start. It was the late 80s, early 90s, and hip-hop was just making its way into the suburbs. There was laughter and cheering in the air as the music started and the beats combined with movement. Now, I had no idea what this was or what it meant, but I do know this. I had a deep sense of belonging to something bigger than myself, and it had nothing to do with alcohol or drugs. Now, fast forward a few years, and I'm in high school, voted the male scholar athlete of my class, unfortunately, with very little ability to deal with emotions or with life. I would isolate and binge eat. I started to become depressed and have suicidal thoughts. I would get into relationships and become jealous. My love for dance was on the back burner. And I didn't have an outlet for authentic self-expression, so I used the coping mechanisms I had, albeit unhealthy ones. When I got to college, I decided to have my first drink, which I never thought I would because I saw what alcohol did to my grandfather. Something unexpected happened, though, when I had that drink. It made me feel okay, like I fit in. I made some great friends and memories at college. But shortly after that, I was assaulted by a gang, which shattered me emotionally. And that's when I realized that I could use drugs to cope my despair and pain. So my use progressed from alcohol to harder drugs, which ended up destroying everything, including myself. Overdosing, almost dying. Locked up in jail, cutting myself, locked up in a psych ward, messing up relationships, cars, jobs, and the list goes on. But in 2004, I ended up back in rehab at a treatment center called Mountainside in Canaan, Connecticut. This was the beginning of my journey in recovery. But all I really knew at this point was that I had to stick around this place because there was something special about Mountainside. It didn't matter if you were at the local cafe in town, the open Friday night meeting, or at a local men's retreat. All of these were connected and supported the mission there. See, I had lost sight of my worth and was resigned to the belief I was probably going to die from addiction. But community is like a mirror, showing us reflections of ourselves. There were people around me showing me through their story, engaging me on a gut and heart level, convincing me that recovery and a life worth pursuing were still possible. And no matter how hard it got, I was no longer alone. Community was the bridge from isolation to connection. My original mentor at Mountainside, Will, encouraged me, and I helped him build a comprehensive and innovative program for clients at Mountainside called the Mind, Body, Spirit program, which led me to become a certified personal trainer and eventually a yoga teacher, which brought me into another community at a retreat center called Kripalu in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. That's right, Kripalu. Kripalu is a nonprofit educational retreat center focusing on yoga and health. The program I did there was a residential volunteer program, a unique and immersive experience in community. We were living together, working together, practicing together, and it was centered on things like yoga and meditation. Not everyone was in recovery, but we all wanted to live a healthier, more meaningful lifestyle while still having fun and being a little crazy at times. As I learned about my passions, I began offering experiences for others. Short periods of time where we would come together in a deeper and more intense way. See, it's the same thing I felt in the hip hop community as a kid, and it's the same thing I felt at Mountainside in recovery. Everybody on the same level, a sense of unity. Euclid, a Greek mathematician, said, two things that are equal to another are equal to each other. In the book Tribal Leadership, it is said, the bigger the foe, the more powerful the tribe. See, what I loved about this is I was gaining a sense of worth again that was connected to myself, to other people, and to the whole. And what made all of this possible, whether it was getting over an addiction or achieving a goal, was this power of community. See, I think we all want to be part of something bigger and have an authentic, genuine way of doing so. But we don't know how. There is no guidebook for this. So we struggle to find hope beyond what we see. We see community on Facebook, but that's artificial. What I'm talking about is organic. It's been reported that 1 in 4 Americans have 0 friends to confide in. That's 25% of us. Relational neuroscience shows us that being cut off from others can result in depression and addiction. So why is it that we are so disconnected? I believe it has to do with a lack of authentic expression, genuine, honest, creative expression in community. And when these two are brought together, it can transform despair into hope, creating a profound impact. One of the ways in which I did this is through an event called a poetry slam. It's a competition invented in the 1980s by a Chicago construction worker named Mark Smith, in which poets present their original work and are scored by members of the audience. When you come into the poetry slam, you see the whole community involved. Greeters connecting the audience, judges giving their honest feedback, the DJ playing a fun intro song for the poets. Imagine the Star Wars theme song playing on your way up to the stage. Epic. And finally, the poets, the heartbeat of the slam, sharing their raw truth, light, dark, and everywhere in between. Surrounding the event, there's an overwhelming sense of contribution. It's the contribution that creates community. But it's the authentic expression which brings that community to life. This takes courage to honestly, authentically express ourselves. But here's the thing. Miracles happen when we're completely vulnerable. This was evident in Ashley's story. Ashley was a volunteer in the program at Kripalu where I facilitated the poetry slam. She saw her fellow volunteers perform in the slam, which sparked desire and fear. Could I really do it? I think this is something we can all relate to. She was so nervous, she compared it to walking around naked in a public setting. Yet I saw Ashley find courage by watching others go before her. And I got to witness this brave young woman step onto the stage and perform in her first poetry slam. Here's what she said about her experience. I finally found my long-lost voice. I don't have to be afraid to be me anymore. The Poetry Slam truly does build a community, and I'm forever blessed and changed because of it. See, without the audience, Ashley would have been reading poetry to a wall. Without the judges, there'd be nothing to come up against to test our truth. Without the DJ, no music to dance to. And without you hearing this story, who would I tell? It's all connected. The need for connection and community is primal, as fundamental as the need for air, water, and food, says physician Dean Ornish. And it's when we are seen in our worst and acknowledged in our best that we truly feel connected. In the words of Scott Peck, there can be no vulnerability without risk. There can be no community without vulnerability. And there can be no peace and ultimately no life without community. There are so many different ways to create community. We're creating one right now. Another way in which I did this was based on my experience in men's retreats and the program at Kripalu. It's a group called Community Council, which I offered at an addictions treatment center in Florida. Once a week, the community would come together in a circle. There would be a talking stick or candle placed in the center of the room. Only the person holding the talking stick or candle could talk. Everyone else listened. There was no prompt. You could say or do anything you wanted. You can get up and dance, scream, vent, cry, or just be silent. The key is that you get to decide in a very meaningful way how you want to contribute to your community. Not to mention, we mirror what we see. One client said after attending community council, I remember it well because it was the one thing that got me to first open up and break out of my shell. Another client revealed a tattoo, symbolic of his history of racism, while simultaneously disowning it and expressing love for his brothers and sisters of all races and backgrounds. Once 3 clients admitted to abusing their medications, which if you don't know, this type of unprovoked self-admission is almost unheard of in addictions treatment. So why is that? I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree. And in fact, mostly what I did was set the context and then watch the community create itself. This empowered individuals to have ownership in what they're creating, which increased investment in their actions and impact. Alex Pentland, a science professor studying human behavior at MIT, said, when we see people in our peer group play with an idea, our behavior changes. That is how culture is created. I'd like to share one last story with you that wraps it all up. Because this isn't only about community. This is also about dreams, goals, and how they fit into the bigger picture. So when I first got to rehab at Mountainside, I was given a task, a chore to do, washing pots and pans after dinner. My friend Justin and I would do our job while listening to electronic dance music, which I used to listen to when I was getting high. I also used to imagine going to music festivals, but would mostly spend that money on drugs. So now, sober, I still like to dance, but I hadn't done it in a while. So we started to joke about this idea, a sober rave, a sober kick-ass dance party. I kind of brushed off the idea after that. Well, years go by, and here I am at Kripalu as an intern in community development. This is the largest retreat center in North America, which means I had access to the biggest rooms and the best sound systems. The sober rave idea popped back in my head. Maybe I can actually do this. I started to move forward with the idea, and everything fell into place. The biggest room in the center was open. Mountainside, the rehab I went through, allowed their clients to come. Devarshi, the yoga teacher trainer who trained me, allowed his students to come. The volunteers in the program where I was interning helped orchestrate the whole thing. Not everyone was in recovery, but we were all willing to be sober for this event, while we danced our asses off on the common ground of sobriety and had a blast doing so. Dan, one of the participants, said, "It showed me I can have an awesome time in sobriety." Carly, who transported the clients, said, "People say there is magic in certain places." I truly felt it that night. That's the experience I had as a kid that I sadly missed in high school and was gratefully coming back to in recovery. Mission accomplished. At one point during the rave, I'm up at the DJ booth, and my buddy Rick, a former Marine who also likes to dance, started cheering my name, and everyone joined in. Dylan, Dylan, Dylan. At that moment, I had a flashback. See, one night after coming back home from the town hall as a kid, where I watched the breakdancing battles, I wrote down on a piece of paper what our basement would look like if it was transformed into a DJ booth and dance floor, and handed it to my dad. Can we do this? Because, Dad, I want to create for other people what I just experienced for myself. I want other people to feel just like I feel right now. And it wasn't until this moment in the main hall of the yoga center, 20 years later, DJing to a group of friends, co-creating the same experience I imagined as a kid, only then did I remember this vision. My dream had come true. See, we may forget our dreams, but they don't forget us. If we are willing to step forward and trust in this power of community, we can find hope beyond what we see, beyond the overdoses, the suicides, and the challenges, even beyond what we thought was possible. But we have to be willing to get vulnerable and engage. Because when we do, those dreams we may have forgotten are still following us, and maybe just around the corner, even if that corner is 20 years away.